Welcome into 5 Wide Fantasy. Today's video looking at the wide receiver position for Week 10 of fantasy football, helping you make start-sit decisions for each and every game this week. If you guys are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe, like the video if you enjoyed, and of course, go check out our partners over at BetFred. Bet 50, you'll get $250 in free bets when you sign up at BetFred. All you got to do is sign up, deposit $50. That link is down below in the description. And of course, every Sunday morning, 11 a.m., we are live on the OwnersBox Sports Twitch account. That link will be down below as well. Come join us at 11. Happy to answer as many start-sit questions as we can, and any late injury news that comes up before 1 o'clock in the week. All right, let's get to the matchups. Actually, not even at 1 o'clock. I forgot we've got a game in, is it a game in Germany? I think this game's in Germany. Seahawks, Bucks, 9:30 on Sunday morning. A game making sure we're setting our lineups for this matchup, which does have a lot of players that are going to be impactful at the wide receiver position for fantasy. I think this is a difficult matchup for both teams here. The Seahawks have quietly been an elite defense against opposing wide receivers, third in fantasy points allowed. The Bucks getting healthier. It looks like Antoine Winfield will finally be back as well. I'm looking at their injury report, and everything seems to be clearing up for this team, and that is a bad sign for opposing wide receivers. I think all four of these guys, we're talking Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, are players you need to adjust expectations for this week. This is a difficult matchup. This total is low. I don't see these teams scoring very much. The one thing here that does help out from for both of these teams, first is how high volume the Bucs passing offense is. They're always throwing the ball a ton, so that does elevate Mike Evans and Chris Godwin's floor. They're always playable assets, even in a bad matchup. Then from the Seahawks side of things, like the Bucs pass rush is completely non-existent. It's one of the worst in the NFL, so that does give Geno some time to move the ball. I think these guys are all playable, but I do see almost all of them as wide receiver threes, to be honest with you. This is just a tough matchup. I would probably be playing all of these guys, though, in the most like scenarios. We're looking at, Tyler Lockett has one of the highest average depths of target in the NFL right now, I believe, or he has some of the most deep targets. So against this Bucs defense that can't get pressure, those could still be coming his way. Next game up, getting into the 1 o'clock slate, Broncos Titans. This total at BetFred is set at 38. This is the lowest total on the week, and I'm pretty sure it was even lower earlier this week. But as you go through the injury report in this game, there are a number of Titans players that haven't been practicing up to Thursday. I'm talking Bud Dupree, Jeffrey Simmons, Christian Fulton. There's another linebacker I'm missing, another guy in the D-tackle spot. Tier Tart is who I was thinking there. This team is really banged up, and I actually think the Broncos could take advantage of that. The Broncos have a really good pass protection unit. They're 9th, I believe, in pass blocking grade from PFF. And Russ has been still throwing the deep ball quite a bit, hasn't been connecting on nearly enough of them. Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton are both top 15 in deep targets on the season, and I don't trust this Titans secondary worth of shit. They're 30th in fantasy points allowed. The big thing is their front four. If their front four is generating pressure, they make life difficult for opposing offenses and passing offenses. We saw it against the Chiefs. Chiefs still put up big numbers, but they struggled to move the ball offensively and score points. So I do think that Jeudy and Sutton are still good plays, even in this low total, because I do like the Broncos in this game. If we go from that, let's get to the BetFred Boost, actually. The BetFred Boost for this week is going to be Broncos plus the 3. I do think that they're going to be able to move the ball offensively, and then this Titans offense, even with Ryan Tannehill at quarterback, is going to be very, very one-dimensional in this matchup. Just Derrick Henry getting the ball a ton. Tannehill doesn't have a lot of weapons to work with. Treylon Burks is going to be back, which is nice for this offense, but I still think against Denver, it's just impossible to move the ball through the air against Denver. And then on the other side, I really like what the Broncos could do offensively with a good pass protection unit and a really bad Titans secondary that's bottom tier in the NFL in pass DVOA. Everything runs through that front four, being able to generate pressure. And if Jeffrey Simmons is out against this pass blocking unit from the Broncos, I'm not sure he's going to be able to do that. Then we're going to be parlaying that play, Broncos plus 3, with Travis Etienne over 3.5 receptions. I talk about this all the time. You want to target the Chiefs, or you want to target pass-catching running backs against the Chiefs. The Chiefs are allowing over 7 receptions per game to the running back position. Travis Etienne in this offense, taking full command now that James Robinson was shipped out. JaMychal Hasty is really the only guy spelling him here. I do, his receiving total is 23.5, but I have seen a lot of screenplays that can result in some negative yardage can take this away from us even if we're over it. So I like going to the receptions just with that number that the Chiefs are allowing. And in that defensive style they play with too high zone, it allows for a lot of opportunities for the backs near the line of scrimmage. So parlaying those two at BetFred, that's boosted. Go sign up. That link is down below in the description. All right, Browns, Dolphins. We get to this game. This total has been creeping up quite a bit. It's like 49.5 now, just before we started recording here on Friday morning. I do think both of these teams will need to put the ball in the air. Actually, maybe the Dolphins side of things, they can be more on the ground. The Browns defense is it's elevating quite a bit. Like it's moving up in a lot of the important stats I look at, like coverage grade, DVOA, pass rush. Everything's getting better as the weeks go on, and they're getting healthier. I think this is a tough matchup for both of these teams, but I do think from the Dolphins side, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle are always a play. But in this matchup, I do like for the Browns is them having to lean on the pass game. The Dolphins are a very good run defense. They add Bradley Chubb as well. I think the Browns with Amari Cooper and Donovan Peoples-Jones, those are players that I would be looking to play this week. Donovan Peoples-Jones to me is a back-end wide receiver 3, a solid flex option. He's given us a great floor lately. And in this matchup, I think that's why the total is elevated, is because these teams will probably lean on the pass a fair bit. The Dolphins have been all season long, but the Browns especially, I think, will need to throw the ball. And Nick Chubb is going to have a bit of a tough time here against the Dolphins pass or run D. Moving to Saints-Steelers, a game here where we have a Steelers pass defense that is dead last in fantasy points allowed to the wide receiver position. And then we have a Saints team that is 22nd in fantasy points allowed and looks like they'll be playing another week without Marshawn Lattimore, and it looks like they'll be missing Marcus May as well. Both have not been practicing this week. That actually leaves us in an advantageous spot for this Steelers passing game. I think Kenny Pickett is going to be able to get the ball to George Pickens, to Deontay Johnson. Both of those players have shown over the course of the season that although they haven't been able to put together big fantasy numbers, they're getting a good looks in the red zone. And I think with Chase Claypool shipped out, this is a game where we could see both of these guys really elevate their fantasy production. So I would definitely look to play both of these guys. Johnson I see as like a wide receiver 2. Pickens I see as a wide receiver 3 this week. This is a pretty good matchup on that side of the ball for the Steelers. On the other side with the Saints, Jarvis Landry is a player that could be back this week, still a limited fashion. I'm really not going to make a prediction whether or not he plays here on Friday, but regardless, Chris Olave is a fantastic start in this matchup. The Steelers, without TJ Watt, haven't been able to generate much of a pass rush. That's hurt the coverage team as well. They got a 57.7 coverage grade from PFF. I think Chris Olave is going to be an excellent start. We talked about it in the must-start players on OwnersBox this week. I'm stacking Andy Dalton and Chris Olave in my DFS contests this week because it's a good matchup, I think, for this team. But if Jarvis Landry plays wide receiver 4, that I wouldn't be too concerned if you have 2 flex spots in a league that you could play Jarvis Landry and need be. It's a good matchup for him, of course. Lions, Bears. The Bears, after giving up a ton of fantasy points to Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle last week, have dropped out of the top 10 in fantasy points allowed to the wide receiver position. So if you look at that side of the ball for the Lions and being able to move the ball offensively, I think really the only player you want to pay attention to is Amon-Ra St. Brown. The Bears still are a team that plays at a slow pace, limits the amount of total plays in the game, and that doesn't allow for secondary options to be able to pick up production, pick up volume, and ultimately produce fantasy points. And really we're looking at it's pretty bleak, the options beyond Amon-Ra St. Brown, but I'm confident Amon-Ra St. Brown week in and week out. The Bears still rank 30th in pass DVOA on the season. The other side, to the Bears offense, what do we do with some of these new weapons? We've got Darnell Mooney, we've got Cole Kmet, but we also have Chase Claypool. I think this is, of course, a good matchup for Justin Fields. The Lions, 29th in fantasy points allowed to the wide receiver position. It's a good matchup. They've been terrible against the pass across the board. Coverage grade, pass rush, fantasy points allowed, DVOA, bottom 10 and everything. But as productive as Justin Fields has been, it has not been through the passing game. Cole Kmet obviously coming off a big week with 2 touchdowns, but this isn't a team that's making splash plays through the air. So I'm not confident in playing. I would rather play George Pickens. I'd rather play Donovan Peoples-Jones than play Darnell Mooney and play Chase Claypool in this matchup, even though it's a good one. I see them as back-end wide receiver 4s, front-end wide receiver 5s, really. They're risky flex options just because, Justin Fields has been explosive in terms of fantasy production, but it's not been from the passing game. So temper expectations. I know we're seeing a juicy matchup here, but that doesn't necessarily mean these guys are ones you want to play, because they can run the ball on this team. Like Khalil Herbert, I think will be more involved after a week where they were trailing, or where they were kind of battling back against the Dolphins. So we could see more use of the running game here. Vikings, Bills. I do not expect Josh Allen to play this week. This point spread has collapsed and been cut in half since its opener at about 8.5. It's down to like 4 now. That tells me that that Josh Allen will not be available for this game. And in that case, Stephon Diggs is still going to be, the reliable target here, a guy I'm never looking to sit, even with Case Keenum at quarterback. Keenum, of course, has worked with Stephon Diggs in the past. Keenum is a one of the most capable backups in the NFL, to be honest with you. But I don't expect him to be able to hit explosive plays to Gabriel Davis or have Isaiah McKenzie be a reliable fantasy option this week. So really, it's Stephon Diggs, and that'll be about it in this matchup against the Vikings, who are pretty bad against the pass. Like, I think Case Keenum can still have some success here. They're 26th in fantasy points allowed. They've got a good pass rush, but the Bills have been pretty decent in pass pro, but they do have some injuries. They have a fair bit of injuries even on the offensive line too. Could be a problem for this Bills offense altogether. On the other side with the Vikings, the Bills are another team that's banged up as well on the defensive side of the ball. I think that in this matchup, the Bills are 11th in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers, 5th in passing DVOA. I still think this is a tough matchup on the road for the Vikings. I'd probably lean towards, you've seen Adam Thielen as like a wide receiver 4 this week. He's always a guy that's pretty dependent on finding the end zone. But if you're in a desperate spot that I've listed some guys that I like that you don't have, or some players I said to sit, that Adam Thielen would then be a pretty decent play this week, but not one with high expectations for me on the road for the Vikings. Next up is Texans-Giants. The Texans here, both of these teams have a pretty poor coverage grade, actually like bottom 10 coverage grade. The Giants 50.8, the Texans 57.2, but they're top 5 in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. And Brandon Cooks, he was back at practice. He's still talking about how unhappy he is about the fact he wasn't traded and how he's not playing for a winning team. I think the Texans are a team I'm not looking to start. Brandon Cooks. I'm not looking to start any of the secondary options here. It's really just Dameon Pierce that's someone I think is playable in this matchup against the Giants. The Giants are a team offensively that are definitely going to lean heavily on Saquon Barkley because the Texans are dead last against the run in the NFL. So Wan'Dale Robinson is a player I'm probably not looking to play, even if this is a pretty good matchup. I'm probably looking to sit any and all pass catchers in this game, just with the way things have shaken out with both of these teams, and they've actually been pretty good in opposing wide receivers' fantasy points scored. So that's how I kind of feel about a matchup that probably isn't one I'm looking to put on the TV unless it shows up on Red Zone every once in a while. Jaguars-Chiefs. I mentioned Travis Etienne and how high I am on him this week from a receiving standpoint. I think you can feel that way about most of these Jaguars wide receivers. Christian Kirk is definitely someone I want to play. This team is almost 10-point underdogs here on the road in Kansas City. So that makes Christian Kirk and even Zay Jones as capable plays this week. I think this is an offense that's going to need to move the ball through the air to stay in this game. I know the Chiefs haven't been great against the run, but they are 25th in fantasy points allowed to the wide receiver position. So still one where I think the Jags can have some success through the air, especially mostly from the fantasy perspective. On the Chiefs side of things, this is a Jags team, 24th in fantasy points allowed, 27th in passing DVOA. This is a good matchup. They tackle terribly right now. They've been tackling terribly for most of the season. So this is a matchup for guys like Mecole Hardman, who's been out with an abdomen injury. He hasn't practiced this week as of Friday morning here, but it is expected that he'll be available to play. He's someone I want to play. Juju Smith-Schuster is someone I want to play, but a Marquez Valdes-Scantling, a Sky Moore, or a Kadarius Toney, I'm still not looking to go to. There's just Marquez Valdes-Scantling is always on the field, but he's just not someone that's targeted enough. And then on the other side of things, we're talking about Kadarius Toney and Sky Moore as guys that are barely getting in, and they're spelling one of these 3 players. So Hardman is someone they kind of look to get the ball to and have him work after the catch. So that's someone that can get some decent volume for you too. And I don't think the Chiefs really haven't been able to run the ball well. So even in a game they'll be leading, I think they'll still be throwing the ball a little bit too. And they got to build that lead by doing something through the pass game. Colts Raiders. A game here where we have a Colts team that's been very, very good against opposing wide receivers, second in fantasy points allowed. So I don't see, a Hunter Renfrow or a Mac Hollins as players that I want to go to. Devontae Adams is someone we'll play week in and week out. I think the expectations are a little bit lower going against Stephon Gilmore this week, but not someone you're really ever looking to sit. It's a guy that's, if they get the ball to him, he's probably going to make enough plays to be able to produce for you. On the other side with the Colts, Jeff Saturday coming in as the head coach with no play calling experience. Nobody on this team has any play calling experience. I feel like Frank Reich was trying to save his job by firing his OC to say, hey, you can't fire me because we already fired the OC, and now if you fire me, there's nobody that has any experience calling plays. So Jonathan Taylor is looking like he's going to be available and healthy. So I think Saturday, being an offensive lineman, probably leans on the run game. And with Sam Ehlinger at QB, it's just not someone I'm willing to trust. I'm sitting Michael Pittman. I'm sitting Alec Pierce. I'm sitting Paris Campbell. I'm not playing any Colts wide receivers in this game. I think that even though the Raiders, I hate their coverage team. They cut they cut Jonathan Abram this week, another first rounder in the secondary they've cut. They're 32nd in pass DVOA. They've been terrible against the pass, but the Colts are just a team that are just a dumpster fire right now that I'm not willing to touch any of these guys as much as I love Michael Pittman as a player. Cowboys, Packers. The Cowboys here are in a pretty tough matchup. The Packers are 7th in fantasy points allowed, have had a good pass rush. Now Rashawn Gary's out for the season. Devondre Campbell might not be available. I do think the Cowboys will find some success on the ground in this game. And the Packers are just a very, very good defense that has had to carry this team all season. I'm seeing CeeDee Lamb as like a wide receiver, back-end wide receiver 2 to front-end wide receiver 3 this week. Jair Alexander is someone that I don't want to see him matched up against. And it looks like Stokes may be out. He hasn't been practicing, so there's some more advantageous stuff for some of these other guys in this offense. But that doesn't really necessarily mean I want to play them. I think the Cowboys will run the ball a fair bit in this game. I'm leaning towards, wanting to sit guys like a guy like Michael Gallup against this Packers defense. It's just been very, very good against the pass. It's such a talented defense. On the other side with the Packers, the Cowboys, of course, have been an elite pass defense all season. Now they are like middle of the road in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. But from the Packers side of things, it looks like Christian Watson avoided any type of major concussion that's going to keep him out for the rest of the week. He has been practicing in full. So Christian Watson available. Romeo Doubs not going to be available. Alan Lazard available. Man, in this game, I do lean towards the Packers putting the ball on the ground more. But again, I say that too often. Like last week, they just barely ran the ball at all. I couldn't understand it. They tried to throw the ball, I thought, far too much. Maybe that changes after just beating your head against the wall and never being able to fucking throw the football whatsoever, because these pass catchers just aren't good enough making plays to get open for Aaron Rodgers in this in any matchup, it seems like. And the Cowboys have been very good against the pass. So, low expectations. These are not. Al Lazard is like a touchdown-dependent guy who's been scoring touchdowns. So even in this game, I'm going to lean towards sitting any and all Packers wide receivers. Talking about a lot of players that I want to sit this week. Cardinals Rams is up next. These are two teams. I looked at the Cardinals injury report. If I can get back, maybe I can get to it here again and talk about this with you guys quickly here. So if you look at here it is. If you look at the Cardinals injury report, Cody Ford did not participate in practice. Rodney Hudson did not participate in practice. DJ Humphries did not participate in practice. Will Hernandez did not participate in practice. Those are 4 offensive linemen that are not practicing, and it's Friday morning. That is terrifying if you are Kyler Murray, who is already dealing with this. Pass pro has not been great this year. So I think it's DeAndre Hopkins, and that's about it. The Rams have been a pretty decent pass rush this year, honestly. They've been pretty solid, of course, with Aaron Donald. And then the other side of things, this total is at 40.5. Like these two teams matching up, I know it's a divisional game, but seeing a total at 40.5 between the Rams and the Cardinals is strange. But both of these pass protections have been terrible. So I think this is going to be a very low-scoring game. Hopkins is definitely someone who has the command of this offense in terms of target share, and is a guy you're going to play week in and week out. But that is as far as I'll go with this Cardinals team, especially if those guys are out. I might even take the under on this total at 40.5 with all of these offensive linemen being banged up. And then if you look at the Rams side, it's the same kind of deal. They have a couple tackles that are not practicing. They have Brian Allen for yet another week of limited practice, their center. So it's really Cooper Kupp and DeAndre Hopkins, and that is where I draw the line this week in this matchup. Chargers, 49ers. Chargers team that is another one that's very banged up. And again, going without Mike Williams and Keenan Allen for yet another week. Just continues to get worse for this Chargers team because Austin Johnson is now out for the season, who is their best run defender. The Chargers are going to get killed in this game. The 49ers are going to absolutely demolish the Chargers. They're probably going to win by 21 to 24 points in this game. There's no chance the Chargers can stop the run, especially with Austin Johnson now out for the season. The Chargers will be behind in this game quite a bit, and they will not be able to run the ball against the 49ers. The 49ers have an elite run defense. The pass defense has taken a step back a bit, but the pass rush is still very good. The coverage grade is still there, 76.9 coverage grade. So I'm looking at Josh Palmer as obviously the Chargers' number one option this week. DeAndre Carter, Gerald Everett. I think these are all guys you could probably play. Like, I'm definitely playing Palmer as like a back-end wide receiver 2 this week, just because of this team is probably going to throw the ball 55 times in this game. So there's going to be plenty of volume and opportunity for these guys. I see these guys as very much low or high floor options. Can they score enough? I'm really not sure. This total is like 45, 46. The 49ers will have this ball a ton. The Chargers might not have a lot of possessions here. So that is how I see things on the Chargers offensive side. Then you get to the 49ers and their passing offense. I don't think they're really going to need to lean on the pass very often in this game. It looks like Deebo Samuel is going to be back. He's been practicing in full. You can go to Deebo Samuel in this matchup. I think he's the only one I really want to go to just because I think the 49ers will lean on the ground game a ton in this game and kind of keep the ball out of Justin Herbert's hands. Last one up, Monday night, Commanders-Eagles. The Eagles like 11-point favorites here. Another matchup where I just see a very difficult time for the pass catchers on the Commanders side of things. Now, they're massive underdogs, so that can elevate the floor of McLaurin and Samuel. But the Eagles, with Darius Slay, I'm probably looking, like if I was going to decide which one of the two I'd want to play, I'd play Curtis Samuel. He's going to avoid Darius Slay. Terry McLaurin's going to see a ton of Darius Slay in this game. So Samuel is someone I'd play over McLaurin. But again, it's a team that maybe they'll have a lot of pass volume, but honestly, the Commanders would be much, much better off running the football in this game. The Eagles, we saw it a couple weeks ago, I can't remember who it was off the top of my head, but they ran the ball really, really well. Oh, was it Dameon Pierce? Yeah, Dameon Pierce ran the ball really well against the Eagles last week. I think the Commanders should look to do that here. That is where this Eagles defense has its weaknesses. It's not against the pass. They're second in DVOA, 9th in fantasy points allowed, an 80.5 coverage grade. So expectations are fairly low for these pass catchers on the Commanders. On the Eagles side, Commanders team, 28th in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers, 25th in passing DVOA. Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, definitely guys I want to play in this matchup, even though they could be in that running game script. But the Commanders are a pretty good run defense, so they may need to throw the ball a decent amount. Divisional game too. I'll honestly, on Monday, I'd probably be betting on the Commanders to cover the number because they can run the ball and stop the run. So that's kind of how I see this game in terms of script playing out. But anyways, that's each and every matchup for Week 10 of the fantasy season. If you guys enjoyed the video, be sure to let me know. Like, comment, subscribe to the channel. And of course, we're on Twitch, 11 a.m. each and every Sunday. Come join us there. That's where we can answer any of your start-sit questions for this week. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time.